Hi, my name is Nicole Kreisiger, and I'm going to be going over FASD. It is common and preventable. The acronym FASD stands for Fatal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder, and this occurs in children that have had prenatal exposure to alcohol, causing neural and structural brain abnormalities and damages. These changes in the brain can have a significant impact on a child's behavior and learning. It's estimated around 1 in 10 women have reported alcohol abuse in the United States. It is one of the disorders that is 100% preventable and also underdiagnosed. About 2 to 7 per 1,000 children are reported to have FASD. However, due to parents not reporting alcohol abuse during pregnancy, researchers indicate that number is really around 1 in 50 and 1 in 20 in children. It is a national problem. Around 67% of mothers that have children with FASD report drinking weekly while pregnant. So it's a national problem, but it has an extreme prevalence in the United States. And that's part of the reason why I chose this topic, is because based on the statistics, chances are that a teacher or special education provider has had a child with FASD or has had a child that has FASD symptoms but has not been diagnosed. So that's why I chose this topic. Now, this is a picture of a brain, of two brains. The one on the left is a 6-week-old baby brain that is healthy, and so you can look at that size and look at the structure of the brain. It's really healthy, it's plump, it has the right folds. If you go ahead and look on the right, that's a 6-week-old baby brain that has fatal alcohol syndrome. So when you're looking at this, you can see that the brain is significantly smaller. It has fewer brain folds. So if you're looking at that healthy brain, you see those crevices and those folds. And then you look at the fatal alcohol syndrome baby, there's hardly any folds and crevices in there. You can also see the size difference, and the inner brain is severely underdeveloped. And you can just tell by the size as well. That's the surface of that fatal alcohol syndrome brain is going to be very smooth. If you were to touch both of these brains, one would be smooth, the healthy brain would be rough and a little bumpy. So the one on the left is the one that you'd want to pay attention to when you have a healthy baby. So with the brain deformalities, there are some learning characteristics that I want to go through. First is the IQ, and the average IQ of a child with FASD is 70, and so many of them do meet the requirement and the criteria for intellectual disability. Those that do not normally borderline, so they have an IQ between 75 and 85, and so it can make it a little difficult for them to receive services, and I'll go through that a little bit more in some later slides as to why that would be. If we're looking at their learning processing, children with FASD process information extremely slow. So this can be because of the hippocampus and the frontal regions of the brain are damaged, and so it makes it really difficult to encode new information. They require high repetition and practice in order to master a topic. They have a difficulty in utilizing strategy, so that can be with a math problem. Maybe they're having an issue with a math problem. Can they use tallies? Can they use an array? It might take them a little longer for them to think of some other ways that they can help. They have poor attention and poor memory, and they have an increased likelihood of having ADHD. And they also struggle to organize and plan their assignments and their day and their playtime. So those are some learning processing struggles that some of the kids struggle with. Another one is our visual and motor skills. So a lot of the kids with FASD have an increased likely of clumsiness, an abnormal gait, or tremors. Poor visual and poor motor coordination, and signs can be noted as early as infancy. And so if we look at this example from Cole's 2011, he asked a participant that was 6 years old to write a number line 1 through 10 and also write the numbers in the circles. And so as you can see, the handwriting is a little sloppy. There's some floating. There's multiple numbers inside the number circles. So this student, I can read the numbers pretty well, but this student does struggle with some of the handwriting. So this would be an example of what maybe an FASD child, what their handwriting would look like. So maybe someone like this would qualify for occupational therapy, and they can get some help that way if they're not receiving services. One of the large issues with FASD is their behavioral and social emotional characteristics. Signs of these types of issues can occur early in infancy, and some of these issues can look like breaking rules frequently, aggression, abusing alcohol or drugs, or even being addicted when they're born. Criminal activities such as stealing. They struggle with emotional control. Around 60% of adults with FASD have had encounters with the criminal justice system, so that's a significant number there. And about 35% have been incarcerated. So understanding some of these social emotional characteristics and behavior can help us start to implement more interventions and treatments for them. So as teachers, we can also look at this chart here, and this comes from Hutton 2021. And so here are some of the neurobehavioral challenges that some of these students have, and here are some modifications that us as teachers can just put into the class. So maybe if they struggle with impulsivity, we can organize the environment to make a challenging behavior more difficult, and increase supervision. So maybe that looks like preferential seating. Maybe they sit somewhere where it's a little less distracting, or maybe right next to the teacher or next to a supportive peer. So here are some things that you can take a look at if you have a child that struggles with FASD or even just behavior problems in general. I wanted to go through some of the characteristics. Most of the time they're pretty minor. So some minor birth defects can be a smooth philtrum, and that would just be that flat upper lip, as you can see in the diagram. Flat nasal bridge. They can have heart murmurs, clinodactyl, and that would be meaning curved fingers. And so those were some of the major ones. They didn't find significant birth defects with height and weight, but if you can see in the pictures, I mean, it would be really difficult to tell if a child has FASD by looking at these kids. I mean, we wouldn't automatically look at them and say they have FASD. So that's another reason why this disorder commonly goes underdiagnosed, is just because the physical characteristics are really difficult to pinpoint. Now, there have been laws and bills for FASD. However, the IDEA doesn't recognize FASD as a category, even though it's a prenatal alcohol exposure that has a negative impact on learning and development. So many of the FASD children don't end up receiving special education services, unfortunately, and part of that could be they're in that borderline range of an intellectual disability, so they don't quite qualify. Some can be placed under an OHI if they go see a doctor and they're able to get some certain diagnoses that then they can qualify under OHI, but it can be pretty tricky sometimes. But they're never labeled as FASD. It can be ADHD, it could be an intellectual disability. So I'd like to see that change so we can provide more support towards this population. There is a Respect Act for FASD that's currently being introduced, and that bill will help support individuals with FASD, and they want to develop a better care system. They also want to develop and identify strategies for educating children with FASD and create centers to help treat and respond to children, and develop more programs at school. So I would love to see this implemented. We'll definitely keep a close eye. Right now it's just being introduced, so it still has a little ways to go. So we'll definitely have to keep an eye on that. However, there are some state and local agencies. If you live in Arizona, there are two that stand out to me. We have NA FACES, which stands for Northern Arizona Fatal Alcohol Center for Education and Support. They offer support groups, advocates, they have counselors, resource centers, and they spread awareness. I did put their contact information below if you're interested in being a part of FA FACES. Next, there's FAS Arizona, and this is a local resource that connects people and families that struggle with FASD. They're a little smaller. They provide workshops, resources, research articles, and they even do outreaches and meetups, so you can build a community with those that also struggle with FASD and those families as well. If you'd like to contact them, I did put the email down there and the website. If you don't live in Arizona, I still wanted to put a resource there for you, and this is a national nonprofit called FASD United. They're a nonprofit organization that's run off of volunteers, and they're dedicated to diminishing birth defects caused by alcohol consumption during pregnancy. They like to focus on providing quality of life for all people who've been affected. They provide education and advocacy, clinicians and research, and statistic articles. If you'd like to contact them, you can email them on their website, and so I posted their website link down below. So thank you so much for listening to this presentation. These are some of the references that I used to gather the information. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and also I'd be happy to send you my PowerPoint if you'd like a copy. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.